Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grant Harper, a local craft beer enthusiast and home brewer. Today I'm going to be talking to you about many of the different beer styles that exist around the world. And now, while the science of brewing may have increased exponentially, the key brewing elements have remained the same throughout time. Right here are a couple of my favorite local breweries, many of which produce beautiful, beautiful beers. And as Laura Sanders once stated, although beer may have nearly faced extinction due to prohibition, many breweries, such as these, have been popping up left and right, especially in the last decade. Now, before we dive on into the different beer styles, I want to first go over the key terminology and ingredients that are used in the brewing process. Starting off with your water. Water makes up 90% of your beer. Without a good water, you're not going to have a good beer. Next up, you have your malts. Malts can range from corn, barley, wheat, rye, sorghum, if you want to make a gluten-free beer. And in my opinion, the malt is essentially the soul of your beer. Next up, you have your hops. There are over 120 different varietals of hops, many of which can give you different flavor profiles such as pine, citrus, cedar, list goes on and on. Next up, you have your yeast. Yeast is the ingredient in beer that gives you your alcohol content as well as your carbonation. It does this by eating the sugar that is actually in your unfermented beer and then releases the carbon dioxide and alcohol. Next up, you have your gravity. The 2020 Brewers Association Beer Style Guide states that you have two different forms of gravity, your original gravity and your final gravity. Your original gravity is the density of your beer prior to fermentation, and thus your final gravity is going to be the density of your beer after fermentation. You can use those two densities to find out the exact alcohol content of your beer. Last but not least, for your terminology, we have the IBUs, or International Bitterness Unit. From the same beer style guide, it states that the value of this number can range from 0 to 100, with 0 being the least bitter beers and 100 being the most bitter. Next up, we're going to move into our light beers. And when I say light, I'm not speaking of your Michelob Ultras, your Bud Lights, etc., etc. I'm referring to the clarity of the beer, as in if you were to put your hand behind the beer, you'd be able to see it. Starting off, we have your wheat beer, or the most known one is the German style Hefeweizen. With the German style Hefeweizen, you can get beautiful notes of Valencia orange peel, lemon zest, coriander, things of that nature. It is a delightful beer, very easy drinking. Next up, you have your Pilsners and Blonde Ales. The Pilsner and Blonde Ales are two of the heavily most consumed beverages in the United States. After that, you have your Pale Ales and India Pale Ales. With the Pale Ales, you can have flavors that range from the very malty English Pale Ale to the very hoppy American Pale Ale. And last but not least, with the India Pale Ale, it is going to be the most hoppy beverage that you're going to find in a beer, especially loved by the Grateful Dead community. Now that we've talked about some of the light beers, let's start moving into my favorite territory, the dark beer. Starting off with the dark beer, you have your brown ales. The brown ales itself are going to give you very nutty, robust, malty flavors, and very delicious, and one of my favorites of all time. I actually just finished brewing my own round of brown ales, and I'm very excited to try. After that, you have your porters and your stouts, two of the most dark beer styles known to man. As the Beer Advocate article once stated, once you go black, you never go back. However, it's also a misconception because people assume that when you have a dark beer, it's going to be a lot heavier in alcohol content, which isn't always the case. As in with Guinness Stout, that is a 4.2% dry stout. It is very easy drinking. You can drink probably several pints of it in one night. It's the type of beer that you can just sit around a campfire, go to a cookout, etc. Go to a football game even. Now I encourage you, everyone, next time you find yourself at a beer, next time you find yourself at a bar, a restaurant, or even a new brewery, I encourage you to try something that's not in your comfort zone. If you don't like IPAs, get out there and try one. You never know what you're going to find until you open up the can. Thank you very much. I apologize, those are my references.